For those of you that were here, I don't know, 2.5, maybe 3 years ago, we had Michael Monroe Kiefer speak to us. And I should remember the date because he talked to us about memory. But, but you know, I met Michael. I'm going to read something from his bio here real quick. But before I do, you know, I had met Michael because we were looking for speakers for a veterans group. Then I'm the president of the Eagle Group of Minnesota Veterans, where we meet at the Officers Club at Fort Snelling, the fourth Wednesday of every month. And some in this colleague of mine said, you need to talk to this guy. I saw him speak. He's one of the best I've ever seen. So we had him come and talk to the Eagle Group. And then I said, well, if you're looking for other places to speak, you know, how about Rotary? He goes, great. So that's why we got him plugged into Rotary. Since then, I've had him speak at the Eagle Group a second time, and now today at our club. But Michael, you know, he was born in New York, graduated from high school at an accelerated rate, 3 years. He received the Teachers Association scholarship from Hornell High School in upstate New York, where he also attended college at the State University of New York in Buffalo. In his first college year, he was inducted into the Latin Honor Society, Phi Eta Sigma, for outstanding academic achievement. He majored in cell and molecular biology and minored in abnormal psychology. That's probably why he's a friend of mine. In 1984, Michael graduated with honors cum laude with a Bachelor of Science degree. He then attended Texas A&M University for graduate school and graduated with a Master of Science degree in genetic engineering. Michael also has a PhD, summa cum laude, in psychology from Addison University. His groundbreaking dissertation research was on conscious, subconscious, and superconscious mental reprogramming models. Celebrating more than 20 years as a professional motivational speaker, psychologist, sports psychologist, radio talk show guest, and subconscious core reprogrammer, Michael has delivered well over 3,000 presentations and has spoken in nearly every state in the United States. His MP3 audiobooks, ebooks, and paperbacks sell to a worldwide audience. Michael has well-developed skills in teaching psychological subconscious programming techniques to athletes, coaches, and sports teams for performance enhancement. In his private practice, Michael works as a life coach and helps people with life planning, goal setting, career counseling, marriage counseling, sports performance enhancement, overcoming depression, PTSD, PTSS, military and corrections reintegration. In 2014, Michael became an ordained minister. So I give you, without further ado, Dr. Michael Monroe Kiefer.
Well, I guess I don't have to go through any bio stuff. That was pretty good. I'm here to talk to you today about part of our research project on the luck factor. And my first book that I published was called The Powermind System. And what we studied in the Powermind System was to look at peak performers. So I started my career as a speaker based off of a 12-year research project studying peak performers. Peak performer types we studied in the United States, people from the late 1800s to the mid-1990s, self-made millionaires, Olympic medalists, top scientists, and professional athletes. And what we were looking for in studying these individuals was what were their psychological habits? What separates top achievers from average people? Why is it only very few people raise themselves to the top of the fields while everybody else maintains an average status or a below average status? So we studied life histories, we studied genetic traits handed down from father to son, mother to daughter. Were there generational differences, things that happened for one generation versus another? Was there a difference between a self-made millionaire and a professional athlete or an Olympic athlete? what are the traits that separate top achievers from average people, and why is it so many people are average and never can raise themselves to the top of their field? So in studying the biographies, autobiographies, life histories, interviewing children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, etc., we determined that there were 4 basic techniques. And the 4 techniques in studying peak performers, based off of some of our research on the people like Alexander Graham Bell, who lived in the late 1800s, who was the mentor for Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, and Andrew Carnegie, in studying Napoleon Hill, who wrote a 1,000-page dissertation on the law of success in his research in the 1920s. And then he condensed that book into something called Think and Grow Rich, a smaller synopsis of the law of success. We found that there are 4 basic traits that separate top performers from average people. And this is repetition from history. So I showed you Alexander Graham Bell, Henry Ford, Andrew Carnegie, Napoleon Hill. It's the same stuff, keeps coming up. Every generation, every 10 to 15 years. The 4 traits are: number 1, peak performers base their careers on their natural talents and genetic skills. So they work in fields where they have a natural aptitude or they have a mental aptitude, either a physical attribute or a natural mental attribute. The average person in the United States works in a job or a career where they have no natural aptitude and no natural talent. That will prevent them from raising themselves to the top of the field because they're in the wrong field, okay? So that's number 1. You have to work in an area where you have a natural talent or a genetic skill. The second feature is they are goal setters and life planners. They're always thinking ahead, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. Where am I going to be 3 years, 5 years, 10 years from today? The average person, once they graduate from college, set no goals at all for themselves. They just wander aimlessly or drift or wait for somebody else to tell them what to do. Peak performers don't do that. They create their own life prophecy. They determine for themselves where they are going to be 2 years, 3 years, 5 years from now, and they work toward achieving that particular goal. The third feature is they have some understanding of how their mind operates, conscious, subconscious, and superconscious. Again, total black box for the average person. Average person has no concept of how their mind operates, conscious, subconscious, or superconscious. They know more about how to operate their smartphone than they know about how to operate their head. So that becomes problematic when they don't know how to control their future with their own talents and skills and abilities that they have. And then the fourth feature on the peak performers is that they believe that it is possible for them. Again, the average person sets up psychological barriers. They don't believe things are possible for them. They feel like they can't do something because they don't have enough money, they don't have enough skill, not enough education, don't live in the right location, don't have enough networking opportunities, don't know the right people. So they set up all these psychological barriers to prevent themselves from achieving anything more than mediocrity, rather than making a determination that where there's a will, there's a way. And they will figure out how to achieve what they want to achieve. Peak performers live by the motto of, I'm going to do it. I will versus I will try. Okay? So with that said, we started our research studying these individuals like Napoleon Hill and Andrew Carnegie to see how they achieved greatness. And it's all the same patterns coming through again and again. Earl Nightingale made an interesting discovery on New Year's Day, 1950, and Earl Nightingale was a student of success as well. He studied the people that I just showed you. So now we're coming up in history to the 1950s, and Earl Nightingale produced a recording called The Strangest Secret in the 1950s, talking about how your goals can be attracted to you. And that became profound because people said, okay, I get the idea that you set a goal, you work hard to try to achieve the goal, and you achieve the goal. But Nightingale latched on to something known as a superconscious effect or superconscious thought induction, commonly known to the average person as luck. It's like, why is it some people are lucky? Why is it some people achieve lucky breaks while other people run into bad luck? They just hit bad breaks, you know? People come up to me in my seminars every once in a while, and they're like, Mike, gosh, you know, this rotten thing happened to me, and I lost my job, and my spouse divorced me. It's like all these horrible things are happening to me over and over and over again. And within 5 minutes of looking at what's inside that person's head, they're all full of negativity. You know, they feel the future has nothing to hold for them. They feel that it's going to be horrible for them. They thought about losing their job 2 years before they lost their job, and by the self-fulfilling prophecy, they lose their job. So the average person thinks in terms of negativity. That's called worry. They're always worrying. They're always thinking about all the terrible things that could happen to them, their future, their business, etc. Whereas a peak performer doesn't do that. They fill their head with the good things that could happen, aka their self-set goals. And they concentrate their mind on the things they want to happen and don't think about the things they don't want to happen. Earl Nightingale found that if a person does this, keeps their mind focused on the things they want, rather than the things they don't want, all kinds of interesting things happen. And he called it the strangest secret. And it is the concept that your goals actually start to move toward you. Okay? And I'll give you some definition of how that occurs and what that actually is as we go through this. I wrote a book, 2012, explaining the law of attraction, which is the basis of Earl Nightingale's discovery of your goals being attracted to you. How is it a person can control luck? Is there a methodology by which you can actually cause things to happen in the future? Self-fulfilling prophecy. And in fact, there is. Now, I'm going to give you the basics of this. Now, we're not going to get into a lot of depth, but I'd give you just the basics. You know, you get an iPhone or you get a Droid or something like that at the store, and they show you the basics, you know, how to turn it on, how to check your email, how to set up your voicemail, things like that. And then they turn you loose, and they say, okay, go out and buy 50,000 apps, and then you can go figure that out on your own. But they show you the basics in the store, right? So that's what we're here for. Here's the basics of how your mind operates. 3 parts to the human mind: conscious mind, subconscious, and superconscious. Conscious mind only operates while you're awake. Okay, easy enough. You're conscious, your conscious mind is operating. You go to sleep, you're unconscious, your conscious mind shuts off. Conscious mind is a linear processor of data, so it can only think one thought at a time. You only think one thought or concept at a time. Even though you have tons and tons of knowledge, you're not thinking about a million things all at once. You're just thinking about one concept or one thought at a time. That's called a linear processor. Now, I did have a guy in a class one time and he said, oh, Mike, no, I'm not like that. He said, I can think 7, 8 totally different concepts all at once. I said, that's very interesting. We call that psychotic. Anyway. Anyway. The average person or the normal person thinks one concept at a time with their conscious mind. Now, the conscious mind is also a programmer for the subconscious mind, meaning that it can give instructions to or tell the subconscious what to do. Okay, so that's an important feature as well. The subconscious mind works 24/7. So it never stops, it never shuts off. And this is measurable. They can hook you up to different EEG machines and monitor your brain waves while you're sleeping. And while you're asleep, there's tons of electrical activity going on in your brain. So your brain isn't shut off, it's operating, it's working, it's doing a lot of things while you're sleeping. That's on a subconscious level. The subconscious mind is also a network processor. So it processes thousands of thoughts all at once. It is not a linear processor. It can think of thousands of thoughts all at one time. It also houses your memory bank. So all the information you've ever had or experienced through your 5, 6 senses since the time you were born to today is recorded and logged into your memory banks. You have that information. The problem with memory is retrieval. It's not recording the data or keeping the data, it's retrieving the data. So the data is in there. It's in your mind. You have a tremendous amount of information, and it continues to grow day by day as you live and you experience. So that is a huge powerhouse of data and information. Again, most people don't know how to utilize that information. How do I tap into that tremendous amount of knowledge and experience that I've gained over 10, 20, 30, 50 years of living? Subconscious mind also determines your core frequency. Everybody has a somewhat magnetic field that surrounds themselves. Think of it like this. Your body is made up of 98% water and electrochemical activity. Obviously, you go in for heart exam, they're measuring the electrical activity in your heart. You go in for a brain exam, they're measuring the electrical activity in your brain. So you have a lot of electrical activity in your body, in your brain. Whenever you run an electric current through a wire, aka a nerve cell, you create a magnetic field, albeit low level. So you're not going to walk out of here today like Magneto or anything and start lifting up cars and throwing them with your mind power or anything like that. But you do have a low-level magnetic field that surrounds your body. We're not going to bend spoons. That's the advanced class. Anyway. The subconscious mind is capable of programming the superconscious. So just as the conscious mind programs the subconscious can program or give instructions to the superconscious. Now, let me explain the interplay between conscious and subconscious. This instruction feature here, the ability to program or give instructions, need an illustration for that. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to try and recall or think of your earliest childhood birthday. So try and recall the earliest birthday that you can remember. How old were you? 5 years old, 6 years old, 10, 13, 15? Try and retrieve and recall your earliest childhood birthday. Now, when you did that, did you do this? Did you say, okay, earliest childhood birthday? What did I do yesterday and the day before and the day before and the day before until you reached your earliest childhood birthday? No, you didn't do that. If your mind operated as a linear processor, that's what you would do. You would do a linear search from today back to your earliest childhood birthday. But you didn't do that. Conscious mind gave an instruction to the subconscious and said, do a memory search and retrieve my earliest childhood birthday from my memory banks. And you recalled and you retrieved that instantaneously. That is a key feature in how to operate conscious and subconscious programming. Okay? So keep that in mind because that's exactly the way it works. So you've got all this knowledge, all this information. The controller is the conscious mind, not the subconscious. People get it backward. They're like, oh, subconscious controls everything. No, it doesn't. Conscious controls everything, gives instruction to the subconscious. Now, the superconscious, here's where people get lost. They're like, oh, I'm with you on conscious, subconscious. That all makes sense. Lots of books on that stuff. But now superconscious, we're getting a little weird. It's like, no, hang with me. Superconscious is your source of extrasensory perception. Everybody has the ability for extrasensory perception. I'll give you examples that you've all experienced in a minute. It is your source of sixth sense and your magnetic field. It is also the source for lucky breaks called superconscious thought induction, which operates by the law of attraction. Now, I will give you this. Women are naturally better at sixth sense than men. Men can learn it, but women have natural ability that is much greater than men in regard to the superconscious and superconscious thought induction. Now, what is superconscious thought induction? Whatever thoughts you hold in your conscious mind on a continuing basis programs the subconscious. It induces the superconscious and dramatically influences your future. This is the principle by which luck can be controlled. So by thinking about the things you want and not the things you don't want, you actually induce the subconscious to action, which will then induce the superconscious. If this occurs, if you are able to hold in your mind the things you want on a continuing basis, and it's easier to teach than to do, because most people want to start to worry. They want to start to think about all the negative things, because our society is negative and you get programmed negatively from the news, newspaper, etc. So the onslaught is negativity. The environment is negativity. So it is a battle to try and control your conscious thinking on a daily basis. But if you do that, you're able to induce the subconscious and the superconscious. When you hit these superconscious events, you arrive at a nexus in time called a lucky break. Luck can be controlled by maintaining daily mental focus on your goals. Have faith. Your goals are in motion toward you, just as Earl Nightingale discovered in The Strangest Secret in 1950. Now, keep in mind that by this low-level field, your mind extends beyond your physical skin or your physical body. Magnetic fields explain low-level telepathy and superconscious thought induction, or luck. Common examples of low-level telepathy. Did you ever go to call somebody and they call you? And you're like, oh wow, I was just thinking of calling you. And then they call you. Who does that happen with? Usually happens with somebody close to you, family member, partner, son, daughter, close friend, okay? Somebody you're going to have more of a connection with, somebody you're going to be more in tune with than somebody you don't know at all. You also tend to get emails and text messages from people. It's like, oh, I'm going to send this person this text message, and bam, they're sending you a text message. You think that's random? Out of all the billions of people that are out there, you think that that just happened randomly, that you're going to send an email to your spouse, your partner, your kid, and they send you something at about the same exact time? Not random at all, okay? Ever been in a one-on-one discussion with somebody, deep conversation with somebody, they can't think of a word, and you say the word, and they're like, yeah, that's what I was trying to think of, or that's what I was thinking of. Well, where's that come from? You pluck that out of their head. That's low-level telepathy, okay? And an interpersonal sense. If someone close to you is injured in an accident, lots of times you will get a sense that that person is in trouble or they've been hurt. Also, ladies in the audience, you ever go to an event, perhaps a networking event or a big gathering of people, and you see somebody there that creeps you out, and you're like, oh, that person's a problem, and you want to stay away from that person. That's a self-protective mechanism, okay? You can sense danger. You get a sense that there's a problem with that individual, that they're trouble, and you don't want to go near that person. Even though you don't know anything about them, they haven't said anything, you just get that sense. That's an interaction between one person's magnetic field and another. Also works in a positive way. You meet somebody and you just click. You're like, oh, wow, you went to the same high school I went to, and you're raised in the same location I was raised. It's like, wow, seems like I've known you for 20 years. Well, why did you hook up with that person at that gathering, that event, or that meeting? Out of all the other people that you could have met, you established that click with the person that's on your wavelength, that's functioning similarly to you, okay? These are all examples of ESP or sixth sense or low-level telepathy. So it's nothing spooky or weird. It happens to everybody on a daily basis most of the time. This can also be controlled. All right, so what happens with superconscious thought induction? What are some of the expected results of these lucky breaks? Okay? Several areas can be expected to occur if you follow the procedure of keeping your mind focused on the things you want and off of the things you don't want. A person unknown to you at the time you set the goal provides you with help or helpful information. So you make a decision that you want to accomplish something or you want something to happen, and then within a day, a week, a month, you meet somebody, you're like, wow, you know, you got all the information I need, or you're the person I need to talk to, or you have my connection, you're my hookup for what I need to have happen. That's the most common form of superconscious thought induction, that you run into that person that has help or helpful information for you. Second function of luck is a deja vu experience. You happen to be in the right place at the right time. It's like, wow, I wasn't even going to come to this meeting, and all of a sudden I showed up, and now you got everything I need. I was glad I came here, and I wasn't even going to be here. A lot of times that happens to people. Deja vu experience. Didn't plan on going somewhere, didn't plan on going to that location, but they just, on what they think is a whim or a coincidence, they happen to show up, and fortunately for them, they did show up because now they're in the right place at the right time. Third one is a deja vu experience. You happen to say the right thing at the right time. You might have known somebody for 10 or 15 years and they didn't know something about you. And all of a sudden you happen to say something and they're like, oh wow, I didn't know you knew her or you knew him or you used to go there. I need something from that place, from that person, from that location. Lots of times that happens to people. Could be somebody they've known for years and years and years, but just by striking up a conversation on what they're trying to achieve or what they're trying to do, that triggers a superconscious effect and speeds them the next step towards their objective or their goal. Fourth feature would be a novel idea. Just get an idea out of the blue, and it happens to work perfectly for you. Fifth one is a plan of action or intuitive guidance. You get a hunch to take a next step or to take an action. A lot of times people don't follow their hunches. They're like, I thought I should do that, but no, it was illogical, so I didn't do it. Never do that. Always follow your hunches. Always follow your intuition. The sixth one is you get enhanced intuition. The more you do this, the more you follow your intuition, the more you learn that this is not chance occurrences. These are not, in fact, just odd things that happen to people. The more you track it, trace it, journal it, write it down, the better you get. This is what the peak performers understood. That's why they had faith in their ability, because they thought, I don't need a complete plan of action. I just need a hunch on the next step to take. I don't need to know how I'm going to achieve what I want to achieve in the next 5 years. Things will happen as long as I stay on this goal path, on this goal track, which will lead me right to the objective that I want to achieve. So they believed in their own ability. They had faith in their own mental capabilities, regardless of whether they lived in the right location, had enough money, had enough education, etc. Thomas Edison holds more patents than any living individual in the United States, and he was thrown out of school in 2nd grade. So how does an uneducated, almost illiterate individual become the greatest inventor, still even today, of the United States? Same with Henry Ford, almost completely ignorant on how to do much of anything, sets up the entire manufacturing foundation for the whole world. Every manufacturing facility operates on the basis of an assembly line system. And all of your 6 Sigma and 5S organizational skills, those were all implemented. Total quality management, everybody attributes Toyota and Honda and Deming with that. It's like, no. Who did Deming study? Deming studied Henry Ford. So it all came from Ford if you study the roots of it. Everybody thinks it's all brand new. It's like, oh, Six Sigma, that's something new. It's like, yeah, study Henry Ford. You get the same thing. All right, and then the last one is automatic writing, the ability to write things almost perfectly. All right, action principle. This is the key thing from my whole talk today. Keep your mind focused on the things you want, your goals, and off of the things you don't want, worry. All right, so how do you keep your mind focused on the things you want? Because you're going to read the newspaper or somebody will tell you about some terrible tragedy that they heard in the newspaper or saw somewhere. So how do you keep your mind focused on the things you want? One way is called vision boards. If you go on YouTube, there's tons of videos on how to create a vision board. It's basically a pictorial representation of the things you want in a poster format. So you make a poster, put all the pictures of the things you want, your goals, money, representation, diagrams, drawings, whatever it is, put it on vision board. I do classes on this, spend half a day making a vision board. Did it with a couples retreat one time. Had couples make vision boards on a Friday night. One couple got way into it. They go, Mike, this vision board thing, awesome, keeps my wife and I focused. We're going to make a his, a hers, and an ours vision board. They want to make 3 of them. That her goals, my goals, and our goals as a couple together. I said, great. And I said, where are you going to put it? They said, we're going to take the mirror from above our bed in our bedroom. We're going to take that down, and we're going to put our vision boards up there. So it's the last thing we see when we go to bed at night and the first thing we see when we wake up in the morning. I said, all right, that's good. Had another couple in the same retreat that wanted the mirror. Anyway. Just depends on what your goals are, all right? They happen to be in the right place at the right time, right? Okay. All right. This guy was an unemployed entertainer. He's got his story on YouTube. He went and made one of these vision boards, put the bands he wanted to play with, the places he wanted to play, framed it, dated it, put it up on the wall in his apartment. Said within 2 years he played with all the people he wanted to play with in all these locations that he had on there. He got so terrified, he stopped doing it. He said, no, this is too freaky. I'm not doing this anymore. I sent him an email. I said, no, you're on the right track. That's exactly what you're supposed to do. He's all scared. So he went from an unemployed entertainer to a freaked out entertainer. Anyway. All right, this woman started her business based on using the vision board concept or the subconscious programming. Okay. Can also, now with technology, put the images on your computer and phones. Put them on as a screensaver. Every time you grab your phone, every time you turn on your computer, you see images of the things you want, your goals. Okay. So you can use the technology to keep your mind focused on the things you want and off of the things you don't want. Okay, peak performers were also persistent. People will always tell you that you can't do something because they can't do it. So they'll tell you, no, you can't do that. Who do you think you are? I faced it when I was at Northrop King writing my first book. All my scientist friends, no, you can't write a book. Why not? They said, because you never wrote a book before. And I started thinking, you know, everybody that wrote a first book had never written a book before. So it's illogical. I mean, people just throw stuff out at you that you can't do something because they can't do it. Then they said, well, you can't sell the book or you can't publish the books. Why not? I'll publish it myself. Well, you don't have enough money. Well, I'll get the money. Well, who's going to buy it? I don't know. Somebody I tell I got the book. They might buy it. And then sure enough, they bought it. They're like, hey, that's interesting. That's cool. I'll buy that. So, you know, people tell you illogical stuff. They're like, oh, you can't do that. You can't do that. You don't have enough education, not enough money. It's like standard stuff. They're always thinking of the reason why you can't do something rather than a reason or a way how you could do something. And I see it when I go to companies too. They're like, oh, we can't do that here. It's like, why not? I don't know. We never did it before. It's like, well, so a lot of places never did anything before, and then once they did it, then they've done it. And they're like, yeah, that makes sense. You're kind of smart. You know, I mean, listen to what people tell you. It's totally illogical on why you can't do stuff, you know. It's like, geez. Anyway, nonsense. It's mostly nonsense. Believe it's possible for you, okay? Believe it's possible for you. Self-made millionaires, a lot of rags to riches stories in the United States. You know, you go up to them and you say, you're a homeless person, you have no money. It's like, so, I got a plan. I have an idea. Person with a plan or an idea is better off than anybody with a job because now they know how to get where they want to go by just staying focused on what they want to achieve. Believe in yourself. Here's another common mistake. People are like, I will try. I will try means you're setting up a backdrop for yourself to quit. So no, not I will try, it's I will. You're going to do it. All right, law of attraction. Whatever thoughts you hold in your conscious mind on a daily basis will be attracted to you. Earl Nightingale's Strangest Secret. Your goals will be attracted to you. We become what we think about. All right, couple of examples. My book's used as a rehabilitation book in prisons. I get a letter from a guy in 2002 in Oak Park Heights, maximum security prison in Stillwater. He says, yeah, I've been reading your book, Powermind System, talking about this conscious, subconscious, superconscious control. He said, I've been a prisoner for nearly 30 years. Said he was convicted as an adult at the age of 16 in Minneapolis for violent crimes and drug dealing. He said, I don't want to get out of prison when I'm 42 and just go back to a life of crime. So he said, I want to become a preacher. He said, that's what I was doing when I was 7, 8 years old. My mom thought I'd make a great preacher. He said, I got involved with my brother in gangs and drug dealing, and I went that path. He said, I want to go back to the earlier path. He gets out of prison 2 years later, walks out of Oak Park Heights, no money, nothing. Preacher drives by in a car, says, "What are you doing?" He said, "Well, I just got out of prison after serving a 10-year sentence." He said, "You need a place to stay?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "What do you do?" He said, "I'm a preacher." He said, "Well, that's what I want to do. I want to become a preacher." So the guy helped him, gave him some money, made some connections for him. 5 years later, he starts his own church in Minneapolis, Church of the Risen Savior. So here's a guy that rehabbed himself from simply thinking about what he wanted to achieve rather than worrying about going back to a life of crime. Had a woman in a class, supervisory class I was doing. She said, "Mike, I hate my job. I'm 27 years old. I live by myself in St. Paul." She worked at the stockyards in St. Paul as a marketing agent. She said, "I want to go back to Green Bay." She said, "I want to do marketing out there. I want to work for a firm that just does marketing." I said, "Do you ever get on LinkedIn?" She goes, "No, what's that?" I said, "Get on LinkedIn and advertise what you want." I said, "A lot of times recruiters are scanning LinkedIn and things like that, looking for people." The night she set up her LinkedIn profile, she calls me the next day. She said, "I got one invitation to link on LinkedIn." I said, "Who was it?" She said, "A woman out of Florida." I said, "All right, link with her." She links with her. The woman's out of Florida. She's a recruiter for marketing people. This woman posted her resume up. She's a recruiter out of Florida. She said, "Well, I don't want to go to Florida. I want to go to Green Bay." The recruiter calls her, says, "No, the position's in Green Bay." Anyway, year later, she gets the job. She's working out in Green Bay. They moved her out there, 30% more money than she was making at the stockyards. And here's the kicker. She said, "I wasn't supposed to go to your supervisory class." She goes, "A friend of mine got sick and couldn't come, so my manager said, 'Why don't you go to this supervisory class because we already get paid for it and have a ticket.'" So she wasn't ever supposed to meet me. That was just on a chance lucky break. And then I turn her on to LinkedIn. She hooks up with the Miami recruiter. Bang, she's out in Green Bay. My younger daughter smashed the bumper off of her car. And it was an old Honda Civic. And it was a white car. She broke half of the bumper off. And I wanted it replaced. And I went and they wanted more money to replace the bumper than the car was worth. So I said, "No, forget that." But it irritated me, and we called the car One Eye. And every morning I'd go through the garage and I'd see that one-eyed car sitting there. And I think, man, I want that car fixed. I want that car fixed. So it was about 6-8 months later. I'm driving her car to get the oil changed. I'm over at the Farmington bakery. I pull out, and there's a guy I never saw before in my life screaming at me saying, "Stop, I got your bumper." Now, this is just a few years ago, so I keep driving, all right? I'm like, no, this is some crazy guy, forget it. So anyway, he's screaming, he's running down the street. Finally, I stop. I said, "What do you want?" He said, is this a 97 Honda Civic? And I said, "Yeah." He said, "I got your bumper." I said, "Okay, where is it?" He said, "Well, it's back at my shop." He said, "I did an insurance claim about 6 months ago, and Honda accidentally sent me 2 bumpers. And he said, I've got a second one all shrink-wrapped and primered from the factory. I didn't know what to do with it till I saw your car with a broken front bumper." And I said, "Okay." I said, "How much to paint it and put it on?" He said, $100, because he said, "I got the bumper for free and I'm looking for new business." I cut him a check. 3 days later, he painted it, put it on the car, all set. Now you might sit there and go, "Oh, well, that just happens to everybody." It's like, really? You're just driving down the road and somebody's got an old car part that you need and runs you down? It's like, come on, okay? So anyway, I could give you dozens of stories of people that I've worked with where I've told them these principles. Keep your mind focused on the things you want, off of the things you don't want, and you will start to see things happen rapidly. This is not something that takes 2 years to happen. You might see something happen in the next day, in the next 2 days, in the next week. I encourage you to share this with kids, high school kids, college kids. When I go to high schools and colleges, they are so dejected. They don't think there's any jobs out there for them. They don't think there's any opportunities out there for them. They don't think there's anything out there for them. I've never seen such a depressed youth out there when I go to high schools and colleges, and I tell them, I say, be thinking about the things you want, not the things you don't want. Don't worry about getting a job. Just go to school, get your degree. The job will be waiting for you when you're ready for it. But you have to keep your mind focused on what you want, and don't listen to the media and your friends, etc. Keep thinking about what you want, and things will fall into place for you. Thank you.